Hey everyone, it's Allie, and it's time to talk about a build I never thought I'd have a chance to make a guide on. Today we'll be discussing Hydra Runemaster, which is one of the most fun builds that's ever existed in last Epoch. All this build does is simply use one of Runic Evocation's 40 different skills to put down a prism that then shoots fireball all over the place. This used to be a crowd favorite and used to be one of the best builds in the game until unfortunately it got triple nerfed with last Epoch's full launch. This is a comfortable build that's really fun to play, and well, it currently boasts one of the fastest Uber Aberroth kills in the game, given some new technology that not only allows it to be back from its super nerf state, but to, well, completely dominate the current meta. The cool thing about this build is that we basically just get to stack defenses the whole time, as our main scaler is mostly going to come from Reowyn's fortress, requiring us to stack a lot of armor, ward, and dodge, giving us a pretty comfortable setup. Given that we are simply going to be triggering our Hydras by just pressing Flame Rush, we pretty much just get to have a 2-button builds where we just press 2 buttons, use our ability skill, press 2 buttons, use our ability skill, and just pretty much clear the whole screen with relative ease. It's a really comfy build for speed farming, and again, it's one of the highest single target damage builds in the game, so I'm really looking forward to playing it, and I've had a wonderful time playing it for about 2 days now before making this build guide, and I'm really looking forward to bringing you a build guide on it. Before we do go any further, I do need to add a disclaimer about this build guide at the start of the video. First off, this build is going to be put together from a perspective of this being your second, third, fourth character, something that you are looking to play as a new build, rather than this being a build that you're just starting to play the season with. All of the build guide is going to be put together from the perspective that you have all the unique items required to play it, and if you don't have any of these unique items, it's very easy to simply just go to the gambling vendor in town, buy yourself a few staves, a few chest plates, and so on, and within 50 to 100 total runes of ascendance, you should very easily be able to create all the items that you need. Without these items, this build is going to feel significantly worse, and I highly do not recommend to play without it. At the same time, link in the description below, there's going to be a classic Allie written guide on every single aspect of this build that we're going to be updating as we get to play through it further. There will be a leveling section that's going to hold your hand through exactly how to level, as well as there being gear sections that are going to go over all the important stats and all the different things that you might care about the build, and it's going to also give you every bit of information you need to know about all the mechanics of the build in a written format. I highly do recommend to go look through it, as it has quite a lot of information in it, and at the bottom of it, there will be a loot filter for you to be able to use that's specifically designed for this build. As for the uniques that you're going to need for this build, we specifically are looking for Reowyn's Fortress, Fundamental, Telfoons, and Box of Hydra. These 4 uniques are basically non-negotiable, and they're needed for the build to function as required, with Bone Clamor being something you could potentially add into the build later once you do find one, and it's not something you immediately need to look for. The first thing we need to discuss is going to be exactly how to level the build itself. Unfortunately, we cannot start playing the build until we get to about 53, where we can put on Telfoons and Fundamental. Without these 2 items, the build's going to feel really bad, and while you could theoretically swap to it at level 38 when you can put on Box of Hydra, I highly do recommend it, as it's going to feel very, very bad. Luckily for us, we get to level with what is genuinely the single best leveling combo currently available for any class, Glacier and Mana Strike. In the written guide, there'll be a build variant section, and this will be linked in the description below, where there's going to be a planner for what your character is going to look like in terms of passives and your passive tree progression and your skills and their progressions themselves. With this, it should be pretty easy, along with you following along with what is written in the written guide, to get yourself all the way to level 53 with no issues, at which point you could properly swap over to the build. This leveling experience is going to assume that you have some leveling gear. While you don't need all the leveling gear in the planner, it will just make your life a lot simpler by using it. And if you do happen to have some of the items here with LP, the planner does show you some sample LP rolls that you could put on it to make everything a little bit easier. The TLDR here is that you're simply just going to press Lightning Blast until you unlock Glacier once you put 5 passive points into your passive skill tree, and then from there, you're simply going to use Glacier and Mana Strike as your combo to level. And if you do have a few slots where you don't have some of these unique items, I would recommend to quickly use a few Runes of Ascendance to go grab yourself the things that you're missing, or to just simply use your best judgment and just pick up some gear off the ground and use it to level with. All you're really looking for is just health, resistances, and intelligence, and that should make everything, when it comes to leveling, a complete breeze. Once you do get to level 53, we can swap over to our build and start playing it. At this point, you'll be able to unlock Rune Bolts, as well as being able to put on Fundamental, Telfoons, Reowyn's, and Box of Hydra. All you have to do at this point is simply just despecialize out of your Glacier and your Mana Strike, and specialize over into Rune Bolts and Runic Evocation, which you can simply just follow the skill progression trees for in the skill section of the written guide. At this point, all we have to do to start being able to play our build properly is to simply set up our skill bar for Runic Evocation's Immutable order. What Runic Evocation typically does is it gives you a rune based off of the skill tag of the skill they use. So if I press a fire skill, I'll get a fire rune. If I press a cold skill, I'll get a cold rune. For us, we are specifically looking to get a lightning rune followed by 2 fire runes above our head for every single runification we do, as that will trigger Hydra. Runification has 40 different skills inside of it, and we need to have a specific rune combination to get a Hydra, which is the skill our whole build is going to be based around. Luckily for us, with Immutable order, this is really simple as long as our action bar is set up properly. What we need to do is put a lightning skill followed by 2 fire skills on our action bar from left to right to make it so anytime we press literally anything, we simply just get lightning, fire, fire, which then makes it really simple for us to get ourselves quite a lot of Hydras. For the lightning skill, you could put literally any of the lightning tag skills in here. It doesn't matter if it's lightning blast or static orb or glyph of dominion or anything. Any of them are fine. We're never going to actually press the skill. It simply just has to take up the slot. And then followed by flame rush and flame ward in whatever order you prefer. For your runification, if you're rune bolts, you could put these on either 2 keybinds on the right, and you're always free to go into settings and change your keybinds around to make this a little bit more comfortable for you if the specific skill setup isn't comfy. From here, all you have to do to be able to play the build is you're going to be pressing 2 rune bolts followed by simply just pressing a flame rush. This is going to make it so Epilogue on flame rush is going to trigger the runification for you automatically, which is really important as it's going to play an important role with 2 of the snapshots we're going to be doing in this build. The first one is going to be a base around our weapon, Reowyn's. What this weapon does is it's going to give you a bunch of added spell damage based off of your armor, your dodge, and your ward, whichever one is lowest. In our case, as a Runemaster, it's really easy to get a lot of ward and a lot of armor, so we really need to focus on the dodge aspect of it, as that's not something a Runemaster is normally meant to have. This is going to be something that we're going to be spending a lot of time focusing on, and this is mostly primarily going to be accomplished by getting a lot of % dodge rating on a lot of our Weaver idols, along with dodge and a lot of other gear. But most importantly, what's going to help us the most with this is going to be running Telfoons. These pair of boots give us a lot of dodge rating, specifically while channeling, and well, when Epilogue gets triggered from Flame Rush, you still technically count as channeling, meaning you get to snapshot yourself a large amount of dodge for free to be able to boost Reowyn's to the absolute moon. The other important snapshot that we're going to be doing in this build is going to pertain to Frostwall. Frostwall has a point called Aspirant Arrival, which gives you 30% more damage with your next runification per second that the Frostwall has existed. What we'll be doing in the build is we're going to be taking 5 points in Marching Winter, and all we need to do for this is to simply just put down a Frostwall, and then we're going to sit here and look at our Chilled Touch buff, which is something that is part of Frostwall's tree, and we're going to wait for it to almost fully run out, and we're going to want to Flame Rush through our Frostwall at the last possible moment. Now, this is not going to give you any sort of buff that you're going to be able to check and see, but what I did there, because we waited basically 10 seconds for the Frostwall to accumulate, is I now gained 300% more damage from Aspirant's Arrival on my next runification. Now, the thing about this is that this buff will permanently be active on your character until you actually press runification yourself. Triggering it through Flame Rush is not going to count. And that means as long as you just keep pressing Flame Rush and never touch your runification, you're now just going to permanently do 300% more damage for, well, forever. This persists through death, and this persists through you swapping around to any monoliths, but this will go away if you go to town, or if you go to the training dummies, or if you just simply go to any other zone that isn't in the end of time. Once you do set up the snapshot, you could simply just remove Frostwall off your bar and put something else here so you don't accidentally press it. As long as you just never press runification, everything is completely set up. Unfortunately, this snapshot is something that we just have to do in the builds. There's no real way around it, as without this, Hydra just kind of ends up being a really bad skill. But with this snapshotting, we effectively quadruple our damage if you were to have 2 T7 rolls, which is what makes Hydra be able to do 2-minute Aberroth kills and what makes it viable as an actual endgame build. When it comes to the actual playstyle of the build itself, it's honestly really simple. While all the snapshotting and whatnot might be a little bit annoying to do, once everything is set up, all you're doing is just pressing 2 rune bolts to get yourself 2 runes, and then just pressing Flame Rush to then trigger your Hydra. All you're doing while mapping is just the same playstyle over and over again, while your Flame Ward, which is just a defensive buff, can simply just be numlock. If you want to know more about how to numlock it, there'll be a guide in the description below, and it's also mentioned in the run guide itself, or you can simply just choose to press it yourself, given that Flame Ward is a massive defensive buff, and it might feel better if you had to choose exactly when it went off. Now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's discuss what your gear is going to look like for the builds, and to talk about our 2 main scalars, Reowyn's Fortress and Fundamental. To first start off by discussing the gear, in the equipment section of the written guide, I've put quite a lot of efforts into just holding your hand through everything, but most importantly, there's going to be a stat priority for every single slot that's just going to show you exactly how you'd want to go about gearing your character. The only real important thing to mention here is going to be that once you swap over to a build, your resistances are going to be a little bit difficult to deal with, and it's going to be something you want to focus on quite heavily until you're situated into build a little bit bit more. To aid with this, what I'd recommend for you to do is to use the Grand Blessing of Humanity and Rated Dragons to just help you out to make sure you're res capped to begin with. And if you have yourself any sort of red rings from your previous characters, you should immediately put those on because they're absurdly best in slot for us. Outside of that, we do have quite a few open suffixes, although we don't have that many given how many unique items we need to use in the build, that you can fill with whatever resistances you need. And most importantly, because we're using nothing but 1x1 small and minor idols, you can get yourself a lot of resistances on your suffixes because there's nothing else useful on those idle suffixes at all. The reason we're using all these small idols in our build is because of Reowyn's Fortress. Reowyn's gives us 1 added spell damage per 10 ward, dodge, or armor, whichever one is lowest. Because of this, I would highly recommend for you to go and either get yourself some prophecies for small and minor Reaver idols as soon as you can, or if you're playing Merchant's Guild, to go and buy yourself quite a few of them to begin with, as they're going to be pretty much where half of your power in this build is going to come from. On these idols as prefixes, we can get ourselves armor and dodge rating, with the Weaver versions of the idols also giving you the percent version of the stat at the same time. Because of this, it's pretty easy for us to get to absurd values pretty quickly, giving us a stupid amount of free spell damage from our Reowyn's. Expect to spend a lot of time here, as this is something you can min-max for quite a long time, given how many roles you can go to perfect and how you need to also balance your resistances at the same time. But honestly, in my opinion, it's going to feel very satisfying, as that just means idols is really all the gear that you need to look for while progressing through the build. The other thing that's going to be important to keep in mind here is going to be Fundamental itself. The only stat that we really care about on Fundamental is the fact that it gives us 3% more damage per attunement that we have. This is a raw multiplier, meaning that if I have 100 of it, I just simply do triple damage. This just effectively means you want to try and find as much attunement as possible in every single piece of gear that you can, and it's basically the single biggest DPS increase that you could get on your gear, outside of getting crit strike multiplier on your weapon, your relic, and your amulets. As well, it's very easy for us to hit 100% crit chance without us really even having to try. Outside of that, you have quite a lot of unique items in the build, and they're pretty easy to get higher legendary potential on them. So a lot of your focus to upgrading the build further is simply going to be focused around you getting better 1, 2, and even 3 LP versions of the items they currently have. It's going to be something we're going to be discussing more in future update videos as we continue to min-max the build, but that should be pretty much everything you need to know to get you going in terms of gear. Speaking of LP, one of the final things I want to mention here is that you really need to go and find yourself a tier 7 fire pen with invocation roll on a chest plate and a helmet, and to go and get yourself a 1 LP fundamental and bone clamor, and to put that tier 7 mod onto those items as soon as possible. This mod at tier 7 is one of the most absurd mods that currently exist in the game, but the armor per raw rune that this gives you is going to be required for you to keep up with your dodge when it comes to scaling your Reowyn's. You should basically immediately go and find this as soon as you're situated with the builds, as everything will feel 2 if not 3 times better in both terms of DPS and in terms of your tinkiness just through this single mod alone. That's pretty much everything you need to know to be able to play this build and have a good time starting with it. As always, if you've never followed Allie Guide, there's going to be plenty of updates on this as we continue to min-max and play through the build. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in the comments below, and I'd be more than happy to help you as soon as I can. I also stream on Twitch every single day, so feel free to come by there and ask me any of your questions live. We also have a Discord full of a lot of kitties, so if you want to come by there or come by our stream and come be a part of our community, I'd be more than happy to see you there as well. With that said, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next video.